So let's get going. So thank you everybody for joining. We're going to try and cram a lot of stuff into this time. So I'm going to fire away without further ado. My name is Bruce. I'm the Director of Products here at Cookdown, and we're going to take a whistle-stop tour of the SCOM connector for ServiceNow. So what is the SCOM connector for ServiceNow? It's actually three products that come in a suite. The first one is called Alert Sync. Alert Sync is all about taking those SCOM alerts and pushing them up into ServiceNow in the form of incidents, which you can route as you see fit. And it's two directional, so you can keep SCOM in sync when stuff changes in ServiceNow, like the incident state. The next one is Discovery. Discovery is all about populating ServiceNow's CMDB with configuration items from SCOM. So those of you who are familiar with SCOM will know it discovers a hell of a lot for everything that it monitors. We take that data and we push it up into ServiceNow in the form of configuration items. Then finally, we have a mapping product, which is all about joining the dots between those individual CIs and completing them with relationships in the form of business or application or whatever type of service you might like. So let's dig into Alert Sync first. So what's the problem here? What's the issue with just looking at SCOM alerts in the SCOM console or in your inbox? The problem is this: SCOM alerts are going unread. SCOM alerts going unread means they are unactioned, and unactioned means there is no value in those SCOM alerts at all, which is a real shame given there can be really great value in those SCOM alerts. Obviously, you wouldn't have set up SCOM in the first place if you didn't believe that to be true. However, I don't think this would be true of your help desk's incidents. I would be willing to put money on some CIO having an SLA for all help desk incidents being resolved really quickly. So how is this for an idea? Let's make alerts into incidents. Problem solved. So that is where Alert Sync comes in. It works with event management from ServiceNow, but also works as a standalone product. In the case of working with event management, it allows SCOM alerts to be managed as events in event management itself. It's a whole bunch easier to set up than event management's native SCOM integration is. It's a management pack for SCOM, and it pushes straight into event management. So it's a half an hour's work kind of thing. We support the latest versions of SCOM. And because we are SCOM experts as a company, we can handle resetting monitors. We understand all of those fun SCOM edge cases that don't mean anything to someone who's purely in the land of ServiceNow. We also push up more properties of alerts. Something's happened to my slide there. We also push up more properties of alerts than are available as standard with event management. But as I mentioned, Alert Sync also works in a standalone case. So in this case, SCOM alerts are sent to our ServiceNow store app into a table that holds all of the SCOM alerts. There are rules in the app which you can create and customize that govern when an incident is raised or not. You can filter stuff out from being sent from SCOM, and you can choose what of what's received from ServiceNow is raised as an incident and how it's handled and routed. So setting the stage, we have on the left hand side SCOM and on the right hand side ServiceNow. So SCOM raises alerts when stuff goes wrong. Those are pushed up to our ServiceNow store app. This is the case without event management. As alert records, they're then matched against what are called incident creation rules. So these govern, is an incident raised, and if so, what are that incident's properties? Assuming a match is found, an incident is raised. Simple enough. So now let's say that incident is something to do with a database transaction log is full, and that incident is assigned to the database assignment group. Let's say Jim from the database assignment group has a look at this incident. He assigns it to himself. He moves it to the in progress state. He puts a few comments on it, maybe sets a business service against it, something to that effect. That information is pushed through the alert record back into SCOM. So you can see with bidirectional sync, you don't need to go into ServiceNow to see what is happening with that incident. The other really important case for this is where that incident is resolved. So now Jim clears the transaction log for this SQL issue and resolves the ServiceNow incident. This information by default is pushed through into SCOM and the SCOM alert itself is closed, this is all default behavior and is customizable. So if you want to have the other way round be true, so when the SCOM alert is closed, resolve the incident, all of that is possible. But that is default behavior. So I'm going to quickly whip into ServiceNow and show you what this kind of looks like really quickly. So this is a SCOM alert I've pushed up into our store app. Here it is, the Cookdown SCOM connector. And here we have all of the properties of the SCOM alert itself. We have information on the monitoring object itself, along with its parents as well, which I'll come on to the importance of in a second. We have information around the monitoring configuration, so which management pack, for example, contains the workflow that generated this alert. Which SCOM management group did this alert come from? Useful for where you have multiple management groups, a test and a production one, and you want to be able to filter stuff out and in. And finally, you have information about the incident. So we have the incident ID here that was raised and the incident creation rule that was hit. So if I just go into this incident really quickly, you should see lots of cool information relating to it. So we've got the configuration item here that this incident relates to. So we set this automatically where you have populated your CMDB from SCOM using our discovery product and you have our alert sync product, because we can join the dots between those two worlds and go, hey, well, this SCOM object raised the SCOM alert. The SCOM alert is this incident ID and this object is this CI. And there we go. So that's the simplest case. I'm not going to spend loads of time going through the details because I just don't have the time. So back to slide land now, and we'll move on to discovery. As with all of these products, there are full videos on our website that detail how you use them and go through a more in-depth demo. So discovery. The reason for discovery is this guy. So this guy is your CIO. He's talking about ServiceNow and he wants it now. He's talking about things like CMDB population. He's interested in reducing MTTR, mean time to resolution, and he wants to know why it's not already been set up. Why is it taking so long to populate this CMDB? Surely it's all the data's out there. It's just a case of getting that data in there, right? He may have spent money on some other products to do this via a more kind of traditional discovery approach where you find the information afresh. And he's looking at you and going, hey, why isn't this thing done? Well, here's a fresh idea. If you were able to populate your CMDB in a day, how cool would that be? Rather than discover that data afresh, why don't we use the data you already have in SCOM? So as I mentioned earlier, with SCOM, it has a whole bunch of objects in it for everything that it monitors, which we can push up into ServiceNow to do this. So on the left-hand side, we have SCOM with its objects, and on the right-hand side, we have ServiceNow with its CIs in it. Our discovery products will match those existing objects against existing CIs in your CMDB using ServiceNow's identification and reconciliation API and engine. Not the most catchy title, but it's very, very powerful, and it's ServiceNow's recommended approach for populating CMDB. If a match is not found, then a new CI is created, and if a match is found, then existing CIs are enriched with additional information from SCOM. So then the key question is, so what can I actually discover from SCOM? The answer is straightforward at a high level. Anything that SCOM monitors, you can push up into ServiceNow. As long as there are objects in SCOM, all of the properties of those objects can be mapped to CI classes and CI types and attributes and pushed up into your CMDB. So back to my demo box quickly, and I'm going to go to the SCOM console now. So this is the discovery UI. So we've actually got discovery and alert sync in the same management pack. So alert sync, I won't go into unless I have time at the end or if there are specific questions. But for discovery, it works using these mappings essentially, which are held in JSON format, and that's important because that's the language that ServiceNow's identification and reconciliation API is expecting to receive CIs in. They contain all of the information around the CIs to be pushed up. So right now we're looking at the mapping between the MS SQL on Windows database class in SCOM and these CI classes in ServiceNow. So we've got the SQL database, the SQL instance, and the Windows server, and we've picked some attributes to push up into ServiceNow. What you'll see in each of these attributes, so name for example, is rather than this containing the name of a single object, which is what ServiceNow is expecting, we have what is called a Cookdown discovery key. So this is effectively a parameter for the contents of a field of an object in SCOM. When this is run through our engine, for all objects of this class, this key is replaced with the actual property. So we build these things up and we push the result when we run through our engine into ServiceNow's identification and reconciliation API. Lots of words. Rather than you having to build these afresh, we've come across a whole bunch of standard sort of scenarios, and we want CIs that are going to work with ServiceNow's own discovery products and other discovery sources, because the reality of this is nobody has just a single discovery product when they're looking at populating their CMDB, and so our CIs need to play nicely. So we've pushed a bunch of these up to our payload library, which is a GitHub repository, so you can take those and get going with standard products like the sorts of things you can see in this list here. So the result in ServiceNow, once you've run this, is something like this. So this is a SQL instance class in ServiceNow. We've got a bunch of information to do with this. We also have the relationships with everything upstream and downstream of it. So we've got a bunch of databases contained on this instance. We can also see that this instance runs on a Windows machine called SQL02. And the real reason why this is valuable is obviously hanging incidents off of these CIs in ServiceNow. Obviously SCOM has objects for all of these, so we simply push them all up. In dependency view, just to show it in sort of pretty diagram form if you like. Here we have the SQL instance. We have the databases. There are a whole bunch of them here. We have the Windows server it runs on, and then from other discovery mappings we have bits and pieces like the network adapter and Windows services that run on those boxes. And there we go. Okay, cool. Back to slides now to move on to mapping. So mapping is all about pushing up both those CIs with discovery and their relationships, which is the unique part. So to understand the why of this, we have to do a little bit of mind reading. So your CIO is likely to be talking about CMDB population in some shape or form now, but they're going to be thinking about, in terms of what's coming next, they're going to be thinking about service mapping, which is really ServiceNow nirvana, when you've got automated incidents being created on top of a sensible CMDB, and all of those CIs are hung together with mapped services. That's where you can really get the value. So when we're talking about service mapping, what are we actually talking about here? So this screenshot is an example of one from a customer, someone that we're working with here, anonymized version. And in this service map, we have at the top level a business service called transport management. So this is the realms of kind of whiteboards up here. So this transport management business service will likely be owned by some head of IT type, and it will be made up of multiple service offerings, in this case the TDP offering. So this is a bunch of applications installed. TDP offering may be made up of one or more installed applications. Maybe, for example, they might have a dev and a test instance of this application underneath it. And you care about the overall effect. Maybe there's some kind of load balancing going on. Maybe there are different instances of the application for different use cases. It doesn't matter. The top half of this diagram is the manually defined stuff. So this lives in the realms of kind of whiteboards and spreadsheets and discussions. The bottom half is all programmatically discoverable. So here we've got an instance of an application service. along with all of the bits and pieces that depends on. So we've got Windows servers, we've got Windows services, and all of the bits and pieces that go with it. So this is all programmatically discoverable, and that is service mapping. And the reason why this is so important to your CIO is this. So consider this. So this Windows server is what this application service is running on. Let's say one of these 2 disks goes pop. Does your CIO care? If it's just one of these 2 disks, no, he does not. If both of those disks go pop, he clearly does care, because it means the Windows server goes down and your application service goes down in some shape or form. So this is all about rolling up those incidents here to the right level, which is all possible where you associate incidents with the correct CI, and those CIs are part of mapped services. In ServiceNow, this is the kind of thing we're talking about here. This is an example of one, our sales app demo. And this is the result in ServiceNow. To show you how we got here, I have to introduce another company. I have to introduce a company called SquaredUp. So this is important. It will become apparent in a second. So we, Cookdown, are a spin-out company from SquaredUp. We create SCOM solutions and SCOM and ServiceNow integrations. And SquaredUp themselves are dashboarding experts. They started off as dashboarding experts for SCOM, but now base those dashboards off of SCOM, Azure, ServiceNow, and others. And we use some capabilities from the SquaredUp product to map out the applications themselves. So how does it work? Important piece. So at a high level, SCOM's architecture looks a bit like this. You have a bunch of SCOM servers in your management group, and they have agents on things that they're monitoring. And everything is pulled centrally and stored in SQL databases that those management servers run on. Great. So SquaredUp, which is how this comes into the picture, in order to map out these services, map services, will ask the SCOM agent what runs on you and what do you connect to build out applications. These applications are saved into SCOM itself, and then Cookdown, this is discovery, will push those SCOM objects along with the mapped application into ServiceNow. Ta-da! The result being services mapped in ServiceNow, all the CIs and their relationships by the combined power of SquaredUp and Cookdown. So this is what it looks like to map out an application at a really high level. I've actually got enough time to show you the product, which is good. So here we have a sort of standard 3-tier app. We have our web tier, our app tier, and a database tier, along with all of the bits and pieces that make up each of these tiers and how they're joined together. And the result in ServiceNow is a mapped service like this. Back to my demo box now. I'm not going to map out an application afresh because it would take too long for the time I've got available. It's all available in sort of videos on the Cookdown website if you'd like to see this thing end to end. But at a high level, this is the mapped application. So here I've actually mapped out SquaredUp itself. So I'm connecting to this box infoweb01 to the /ops18 site. So I've added in that. By adding this in, we've run what's called a discovery in the SCOM sense of the word discovery on this box. And we found out what this connects to. And we've walked the tree between these machines to build out this mapped application. And that's the result saved into SCOM. It's called Ops18 SquaredUp map. And the result when we use Cookdown Discovery to push all of this up into ServiceNow is this. So in this case, I've used the application service class. You can pick whichever class you like. You can do business services, technical services, application services, whatever you like. The thing that's important is this data is in SCOM in the first place. So we can do things like this. So this is let's put it in radial mode. And this is the service in ServiceNow from this map I showed you a second ago. So we've got all the Windows services, all of the databases, the websites, the Windows services, etc. And with some of these things like the database, for example, I should be able to drill down and load more information about them. For example, the SQL instance they run on, I could continue to drill down further, but because this SQL instance will host multiple databases, this thing will then get very complicated very quickly. Because this is all pushed up into ServiceNow using the Cookdown Discovery product, all of the mappings are in these payloads here. So if you want to do something different from what I've done, which should be ServiceNow best practice, you can just modify the relationships here. And that is the mapping product at a really high level. Perfect. So at the moment, no kind of webinar would be complete without a mention of COVID-19. Unfortunately true. So right now we're all in lockdown. We're all working from home. You can probably hear kids in the background here today because I'm also working from home. Webinars from home are a fun thing. This is, for now at least, the new normal. We have whole companies remote working, some for the very first time. So we have a lot of company culture changes happening right now, some literally overnight. 100% of sales, if you're a retail outlet, now go through your website. You don't have a physical shop right now. Whereas traditionally you might have had more of a 50-50 split. So the way you engage customers has changed. And all the automation that holds your applications together, things like Scorch, Orchestration Manager, for example, are now going to be key to the operation of your business, as you don't have the ability to walk up to people's desks and go, hey Jim, is this thing working like it should? You have to rely on that tooling more now than ever before. So the importance of monitoring must change too with all of this. Having oversight is really, really critical. If you consider the impact of, in the case of company culture change, your VDI platform being down. So before COVID-19, maybe half your company worked from home every now and then. Now the whole company is relying on that infrastructure. If you're a retail outlet, all of your sales going through your website, if that website goes down, you've lost all your sales. And the same with your automation. Let's consider the case of a manufacturing company, or I mean, even us here at Cookdown. We have automation that issues licenses. If that went down, we wouldn't have product licenses. In the case of a manufacturing company, it might be the difference between an order of raw materials getting through to a supplier and not. It's really, really critical. In summary, oversight is critical. Sauron's all-seeing eye goes here. So, this is why, in response to COVID-19, we're doing a business continuity version of our Alert Sync product. It will let you use Alert Sync exactly as I explained it at the beginning of this call for free for 90 days. There's no catches, there's no sort of expectation you'll use it after that period. It includes free professional onboarding services to get you up and running so you haven't got to figure it out yourself. And just to give you a rough idea, a typical setup will take an hour. It's not complicated. We give you free support throughout. There's a tongue twister for you. And of course, all of the cool features that we just talked about. So it's free right now. If you go to cookdown.com/alert-sync, it is there. Fill in the form and we'll send you your license and get you rolling with that. So all that's left to say is just to explain a little bit about the value of creating dashboards on top of all of that cool SCOM and ServiceNow data. So this is a SquaredUp dashboard from our original sort of parent company, SquaredUp, who we spun out from. It gives you information about incidents, also information around your ServiceNow instance from SCOM. All of this is a HTML5 dashboard. It's a lightweight HTML5 web application. So we've got information on our incidents from ServiceNow. We've got information about our SCOM alerts that raised those incidents. These bits and pieces here, information about your ServiceNow instance. So we've got the latency and experience from your remote sites here. We've got the instance availability here. We've got stats on your ServiceNow instance's performance. These 3 are pulled from Cookdown's ServiceNow Monitoring Management Pack, which is a freebie that we do, which you can go and get now. We've got information on SCOM alerts in here. So we've got the incident IDs for a bunch of SCOM alerts here that we pushed through into ServiceNow, raised as incidents, and pushed that incident ID back through into SCOM. So you can see what's going on there. So it's really, really valuable to give you those insights on what's going on across the board. So a little bit about SquaredUp. They're an IT data visualization company and have been going for over 8 years. They're sort of great for monitoring, visualizing your monitoring across SCOM and Azure. Really great support rating and renewal rating, and of course Net Promoter Score, and hundreds of enterprise customers worldwide, and a really passionate community of over 2,000 experts that support what's going on. The vision for SquaredUp is summed up in this simple phrase: the single pane of glass. So the whole idea is that there is a single pane of glass, single place you can go to for information about every application and every team from every angle. So this will be stats from things like obviously SCOM, obviously Azure, but also ServiceNow, Pingdom, Dynatrace, you name it. And the aim here is so you don't have to have 10 dashboards up to get the full picture, so that everything is in one place. For more information on SquaredUp, go to squareup.com. And as I say, this is the sort of thing you can do with the joint power of SquaredUp plus Cookdown. Perfect, I completed it on time, so we've got 2 minutes for questions. I know it was a very whistle-stop tour, so there may be a whole bunch, there may be none at all. We shall see. Are there any questions from anyone on the call? Thank you very much, everybody, for joining. I hope today's been useful and has made sense. If you have any more questions on anything that we've shown today or talked about today, we're at hello@cookdown.com or on Twitter @team_cookdown, and we'll be happy to answer any questions. Perfect. Thank you very much, everyone. And hopefully I'll be back in the office soon, so I won't be doing webinars from home. So apologies if kids in the background interrupted things. Thank you. Bye, guys.